Hi, welcome. We're here tonight to learn about the Department of Rehabilitation, an important resource that helps many people with disabilities in California achieve independence and employment. Tonight's presentation is brought to you by Parents Helping Parents of Silicon Valley and the WarmLine Family Resource Center of the Sacramento area. Both of our agencies are parent centers. We support families raising children with disabilities to build bright futures for them, and also do some training of the professionals that support that community. There are parent centers in every county in California. So if you need additional assistance, please connect with your local parent center. So I would like to introduce you to Pam Chu, our moderator for tonight. She is the Executive Director of WarmLine, and she will introduce our speakers. Thanks for joining us and hope you enjoy the evening.
We are so super excited to be partnering with Parents Helping Parents and Department of Rehabilitation on this town hall. It's been in the works for months for all of us to get together tonight to learn about the valuable services provided by DOR. We are seeing the tremendous need for the support through the overwhelming response and registration that we've received from all over the state. As I said earlier, as of this afternoon, just before the start of the event, we have 600 registrants registering for this event from all over the state. And that shows really, I think, the need and the demand for the services provided by the department. And it's not a coincidence that we have planned this event for June as school is letting out. I know that many of you have students who are either approaching graduation, perhaps in the coming few years, or maybe getting ready to graduate this month, or have recently graduated, and undoubtedly thinking about those transition plans to either college or training or employment. And with this webinar format, although I can't see all of your faces out there, I wish I could. I can say that as the parent of a 10-year-old with disabilities, he just almost broke in here through the door here. I'm hoping he doesn't do that tonight. But I very much connect with your presence here tonight and the desire to learn more about these services and support so that all of our children can live a fulfilling life with independence and meaningful employment, as the title of this event suggests. Many of you have shared with us through the registration survey that you know very little about DOR and their services. So what we hope to provide for you tonight is a foundational knowledge of what those services are, who they're catered to, where and how can you obtain those services, and where to go after this session tonight. And who better to learn all of that from than the department director himself, Xavier. So at this point, I'm going to ask Joe to join me, not on stage, but on the screen. Joe, would you join me? Well, good evening, Joe. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, and you?
Good, really excited to be here. Thank you so much. First, I want to start off by thanking you for your enthusiastic response and engagement with us since we've invited you to partner in this event and helping so many families to learn about the department. You've been the director of the department for about 7 years now. You were appointed by Governor Brown in 2014, I believe, and I've been with the department for 21 years. I did my math. Hopefully I did that right, and worked your way up through different roles through the department. The department, I think you shared with me, has a little over 2,000 employees and numerous field offices throughout the state. I don't know how many there are.
There's 85 of them.
Oh, wow, 85. Okay, that's a lot of field offices to provide services for all of our audience members tonight. Now, what's not typical about your bio, Joe, is that you're a former consumer and beneficiary of DOR services yourself. And I know that, I met you for the first time out about a month ago to plan for this event. And I know that coming away from our conversation, what really impressed me the most is your passion in your role in wanting to provide the type of support and services to every young person that comes into DOR to allow them to thrive the way you have. And I'm not going to say too much more because I think you have such an interesting background, and I know you're going to share that and weave that into your presentation tonight. So I will leave that to you. before our audience members. Joe will speak for about 20 minutes or so, and then we have extended our time to 7:45 this evening so we can try to get through as many questions as possible. With that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Joe. Thank you.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here. Buenas noches a todos. I'm glad to have you here with us. Let me start by just thanking you for that introduction, Pam, and certainly for the invitation to be here. One of my highlights is always the opportunity to talk to our communities and individuals with disabilities about the work that we do, specifically employment for people with disability. So for all of you that have made the time to join us, thank you. It's always an opportunity for you to learn not only about resources, but really about what's possible. What are the opportunities out there for your loved ones in the world of employment and independent living? And so to WarmLine and Parents Helping Parents, the work that you do is invaluable. Thank you for that. We know that we have a number of partners that have joined us. We cannot do the work that we do without your partnership, and the consumers that we collectively serve could not get their whole person care needs met without the collective work that we do. We have a number of our Department of Rehabilitation team that has joined us, both supporting the presentation as well as contributing to it. So thank you to everyone for being here and making the time. So as I talk to you about what the Department of Rehabilitation does, I'm going to talk to you from a couple of different lenses. One is my own personal journey. Two is what's really employment for people with disabilities? What does that look like? And then what are some of the thinking that happens from the business community, and what do people with disabilities experience? And then through the Q&A, we're going to get into a lot of the details about how, when, and where do you connect to the services around the state of California. So let me start by sharing with you that this overview really is about thinking about the context of what we're doing today. I'm sorry, let me clear my thoughts there. One of the things that we often think about when we engage in these conversations is, how do we get here? And where does it go from here, right? And one of the quotes that I heard recently really helps to put this in a context. What occurred in the past shapes the present, and it's what occurs in the present that shapes our future. So beyond my title, why should you pay much attention to anything that I have to share with you? Well, so let's start with I am blind, and today I am the director of the Department of Rehabilitation, the largest vocational rehabilitation program in the country, and probably larger than certainly most countries. And this is not about how good I am or what I have accomplished. It is really for you as parents and family members to see the opportunities. It is for students to see themselves and believe they too can belong and they too can accomplish. I am an immigrant to this country. I had to learn the language. I was born in the Azores Islands, a group of islands off of the coast of Portugal. My first language is Portuguese, and I'm one of 8 kids, the only one with a disability. My eyesight went from very, very thick glasses from virtually infancy on to all ranges that you can imagine, to the point where today I literally have light perception, and that light perception has to be a pretty deep contrast for me to tell if the lights are on or off. And frankly, it's not unusual for my wife to show up at home and say, "Why do you have the lights off?" "Oh, sorry, forgot to turn them on." I grew up in agriculture here in California, milking cows, feeding calves, irrigating crops, doing all the work that you can imagine that takes place on a dairy farm. In my sophomore, beginning of my junior year in high school, I was introduced to the Department of Rehabilitation. We'll come back and talk about student services later. And as an individual who was blind, an individual who lost my eyesight over time, I experienced the stigma that is associated with disability. And I did a whole lot to hide that. I have experienced the isolation that an individual can feel. I have felt very alone in a crowded room. So when we talk about stigma and isolation, those are not academic terms for me. Those are lived experiences that I have had. And I too have been on Social Security income. I benefited tremendously from being on SSI. And what I will tell you is that in order for me to accomplish what I have accomplished and to enjoy what I have today, it meant that I gave up being on SSI to grab a hold of the opportunities that I have today. So often people will say, so Joe, in your life's experiences, what do you attribute your success to? Well, a number of things. My family gave me the expectation that I would work. That never was in question. What I might do and how I might do it was in question. And from the earliest age, I was engaged in chores, I was engaged in work, I was engaged in all those activities that develops the skill that I needed to become employed. And along the way, many, many people believed in me when many times I may not have believed in myself. And I was held accountable. In my early 20s, I took over a business in Santa Rosa and got into a conversation when one of my employees was a little dissatisfied with me. And she looked at me and she said, and by an iron, you're a wrinkled mess. And she was right. And I went and bought an iron, and I learned that if I was going to be a professional in the workplace, then I needed to look like that professional. And so yes, a dairy farmer learned how to iron clothes and how to do that. And at the end of the day, who determined that I was job ready? Who said, Joe, you are ready to go to work? Who said, Joe, you're ready for this job? In this particular case, Secretary Galley that hired me most recently, and Governor Newsom that appointed me for the second time, as you heard, Governor Brown appointed me the first time. But more importantly than the titles and those accomplishments that I just shared with you, I am a husband, I'm a father, and I'm a papa. The best job anyone can ever have. So you were given, or you will be given a number of slides that capture a number of resources that will be beneficial to you as you navigate with your family, the pursuit of employment, and certainly it'll give you information about our services. It will highlight what student services are. It'll talk about what adult services are, and it will talk about how do you find the office nearest you so that you can avail yourselves of those services. And certainly it will highlight a number of the partners that we have, by no means all of them, because we have many. So what do we know today about employment and unemployment for individuals with disabilities? We know that integration today is viewed much like a civil right. And integration is key to individuals with disabilities being able to have employment and to live in their community with dignity and with purpose. Competitive integrated employment is real work in the real world for real pay. But we also know that 70% of working age individuals with disabilities are not employed and or not participating in the workforce. And we also know that employment, as I already mentioned, is a pillar of integration in the community, of living in the community with purpose and dignity. It is a social determinants of health. People that work have better health. People that work and have better health have lower health costs. And we know that individuals that work and live independently have better access to housing, have better access to transportation, and the very supports that we need both to live independently and to work in the community. And often, we do not think of employment as an essential pillar of community living. And I submit to you that they're the opposite sides of that same coin. You cannot have one without the other. At the end of the day, the best anecdote the best way to eliminate institutionalization or to keep people from becoming institutionalized is to provide them with a family sustaining wage. I want to talk a little bit about the caseload of the Department of Rehabilitation because this is key in how you engage us, and it's key in the services that you will receive. We know that comparing federal fiscal year 17 to today, 48% increase in the individuals that left our program without getting a job. That is really important for you to know, and we'll talk about throughout the evening. We know that comparing those same time frames, 32%, okay, were closed for failure to contact. We closed 32% of the individuals that came to us and got a plan because we lost contact with those individuals. And we know that the shorter the gap between the time you show up for our services and we put you into services and into plan, the shorter the time frame, the higher the likelihood that you will go to work and stay at work. So what are the pathways into employment? Well, we certainly know about higher education through the pursuit of degrees and credentials. And we certainly know the career technical education, the earn and learn model is increasingly an option, and increasingly an option with great benefits for individuals who do not want to pursue higher education. And there is also the workplace progression, the opportunity to develop your skills, to pursue the opportunities that present themselves in the workplace. And yes, you can evolve into the professional ranks as many folks have. What path do you use? You use the path that best matches your interests, that best matches what approach is comfortable for you. What does it take to get a job? What are the services that we provide about, right? It's what it takes to get a job so that you have that family sustaining wage. And one of the things that I want to remind everyone of at this point, there is a distinction between having a hobby and pursuing a job, pursuing a career. A hobby I pay to do, a job and a career someone else pays me to do. There are 3 key stages to becoming ready for employment, and we participate in essentially one of those stages with our services, and we work to influence the other 2 stages. First is at the earliest stage, as I described for myself, developing the skill set that is needed for the workplace, and I'll come back and talk about that in a second. And 2, the prepare and readiness. What are the competencies, the skills that are necessary to get a job? That's where we come in. We'll talk about those services during the question and answer. And then, of course, there is getting hired. All of the best programming and services in the world does not help if somebody does not hire me and give me that opportunity to earn that wage. What are the barriers to competitive integrated employment, right? According to the Journal of Occupational Rehabilitation, employers report that individuals with disabilities do not present well in interviews, that people with disabilities lack the necessary work skills to both get that job and keep that job. The top 6 soft skills that employers report as a void for individuals with disabilities: communications, conflict management, critical thinking, work ethics, productivity, hygiene, and grooming. Again, if you think about those and you flip those over, those are the kinds of skills that we as a department help the individual to develop. So when we think about the job and the career, right? If I like the job, am I willing to do what it takes to do that job? And am I training and developing my skill set for the jobs that exist? Am I training and developing my skill set for the job that exists? And does that job exist where I am willing to live. I often tell folks, tongue in cheek, but not so tongue in cheek, if I am in Arizona and I want to be a deep sea welder, that's probably not where I'm going to find that job. If I'm not willing to leave Arizona, then the likelihood that I'm preparing for a career that I can get a job in is not very good. You need a job to get experience, and you need experience to get a job. But here's the truth. None of us started in our ideal job. We all started somewhere and we developed our skill set to ultimately end up in our ideal jobs. And when you have a learning mindset, opportunities are much more plentiful to you. The broader your experience, the more skill set you have, and the more appealing you are to that hiring manager. So, most importantly, the first day of a work experience, the first day of your job, the first day of your career is the first day of preparation for that next stage that you will have. And we always need to keep that in mind, okay? What are the keys that are essential to getting the job? One is, do you have the hard skills, the knowledge, the skills, abilities, and can you demonstrate those to the people that are doing the hiring? Two, do you have the soft skills that are necessary? I already mentioned the number of the behaviors. In my case, as the person with a disability, do I have the skills around my blindness? Do I know how to navigate my environment? Do I know how to use my assistive technology? Do I have the ability to get to and from? And do I have that mindset to open to learning, as I've already shared? So, me being comfortable with myself as a person with a disability, me being able to describe my disability as an asset, as a problem solver, as a strategic thinker to my employer is key in that employer looking at me as an asset. So how is the Department of Rehabilitation helping our youth prepare for employment? Again, as I've said, we will address the mechanics, the ones in the house of getting those services through our Q&A. But let's start with the fact that we believe in the talent and the potential of individuals with disabilities, including those among us with the most significant disabilities, exception none. And we deliver services locally through 85 offices across the state of California, so no doubt there is an office near you. Our services are to gain, to retain, or regain employment. And we individualize our services to the unique needs and circumstances of each individual. We don't have a cookie cutter approach. We sit down with the individual and we figure out what job they want to go do, what career they want to pursue. And then it is mapping out what does it take to get from where they are to that job and to that career. We certainly also have our independent living services programs that provide a complement of services so individuals can continue to live in their community. Those are things that we can also provide you resources on at some future date. And in 2014, 2018 timeframe, we transitioned into providing student services in partnership with our local education agencies. What are those? They are job exploration counseling, work-based learning experiences, post-secondary counseling, workplace readiness training, instruction and self-advocacy. And we work with transition partnership programs at the school systems, as well as we can work contracts as an example. We partner with our community college foundation. We partner with our America's Job Centers and many others to provide the work experiences that I have alluded to throughout. But when we think of students, we know that they are general education first. And I will tell you the great value of having students with disabilities in general education. One, they're developing the skill sets to be in a competitive, integrated workplace. But two, they're also helping the non-disabled peers to not fear disability, but to understand it and embrace it just as a natural part of human life, just like any other aspect of anyone. And what is key is that student have the expectation from everyone, medical, social, health, education, workforce, that they will go to work. The question is doing what? So I want to wrap this up and open it up for questions and answers, but just a couple of closing thoughts, right? So I want to bring what I shared with you to life. I want to give it a face and a practicality, and I want to do so not to point out what did not work, but to highlight how each of us plays an important and pivotal role in individuals becoming employed. A number of years ago, I attended a forum for youth with disabilities. At that forum was an individual who was blind like myself. That individual played the piano, read Braille, complete motor skills. We sat down for lunch, and that individual proceeded to eat chicken, salad, and rice with their hands. In the conversation, I made it known to that individual that I was blind. At some point during our conversation, he said to me, as a blind guy, do you know how I can use a fork and a knife? And I was more than glad to engage him in those skill sets. Now, how will he be employed and who will give him that job? And we collectively, no matter where we are, have that responsibility to ensure that that does not happen to individuals, because we can do much better than that. And again, employment is everyone's business. The Department of Rehabilitation is a resource. The Department of Rehabilitation has the programs and the services that will address much of what I described. But it is every single person who comes across an individual with youth with disabilities business to help do that. So I want to stop here. I want to bring on to the panel my colleague, Mark Erlichman, who is an executive over our Field Services Division, and Vivian Hernandez-Obaldia, who is one of our regional directors, to engage in the questions that you have submitted and any that you have. And with that, Pam, I will kick this back over to you.
Thank you very much, Joe, for that overview and sharing with us your personal journey, and I think motivating and inspiring all the parents out there to do the same for their kids, for our kids. Well, thank you, Mark and Vivian, for joining us this evening as well. Well, let's jump into the questions. I think one of the first questions is, who is eligible for DOR services? We had a number of questions about whether you had to be a regional center client to access those services.
So I'm going to start that, and this will be very organic. Mark and Vivian will, of course, add in and add gaps or fill gaps, make sure that you have a complete picture of this. So the simple version of who is eligible is anyone who has a disability, who wants to go to work, and who has barriers to employment and is available to participate in the services. So whether you're a regional center client, whether you're not, whether you are 18 or 28 or 38, it doesn't matter. If you're an individual with a disability who wants to go to work and you have barriers to employment, you're eligible for our services. And Mark and Vivian, I will just pause. You guys please add in.
No, I think, Joe, I think you got it. I think for us, we really don't require other programs to also be providing services like the regional center. We absolutely coordinate and work in partnership with our partner programs like the regional center, but there's not a requirement. So oftentimes we can connect them to other services. But as Joe said, really we're looking for individuals with disabilities who are interested in entering into maintaining, regaining, or advancing in employment.
Is a follow-up question to that, is there a minimum age? You know, there was a question of when can you start?
Go ahead, Vivian, Mark.
Oh, I'll take that. So good afternoon, buenas tardes. I do understand there are a number of people that speak Spanish. I appreciate the questions and I appreciate being here this evening. So there's an age limit to when we can start the service, only because as Joe mentioned, we started in 2014 to provide services to students with disabilities. So the framework varies depending on where they are in their educational system and when they're ready for employment. So this is where we partner with the schools to figure out their work permit and their ability and their accessibility to employment. So the age limit is based on when they are really available. We could start as early realistically as 14. And you could be 100 years old and still apply for services within DOR as long as you meet the eligibility criteria. And most of all, be able to benefit from our services. We want to be able to see that we call our, I guess, participants consumers. We want to see them succeed and benefiting from our services. But we have seen some students start before the age of 14 if they wish to prepare for employment. Joe mentioned some of the student services that we provide. And it's all based on when and if the student is going to be available. Typically, I see that young adults can start and benefit because they're ready for employment. They're ready to prepare for employment. But the age limit, I would say, would be 14.
Okay, thank you, Vivian. That's helpful. I think a lot of people were wondering about that. And then we had a series of questions about now that we know who the department serves, how do they get started in accessing these services?
Well, I'm going to give you the most simple answer, and then I know you want to know more about the process of it. But the first thing that I think that to how do you start the services is really, to Vivian's point, are you ready to go to work? But here's what I want you to hear about starting the services. Sometimes you're not even sure what kind of work you want to go do, and that's okay. So when you are just ready to say, it's time for me to get moving on this pathway to employment, one of the slides that we shared with you has the Department of Rehabilitation's webpage information. You can go to our webpage. There you're going to find offices that are going to be closest to you, and you'll find contact information for those offices. And it's going into or connecting with that office, whether it's through telephone or whatever vehicle is available there, and simply say, I want to go to work and I want to come and engage with you in those services. And Mark, you and Vivian can add to and the mechanics of how people can pursue that.
Vivian, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so it's interesting because sometimes we get caught up in policies, regulations, but the reality is that anybody can pick up the phone and call us and express an interest in our services. You can go online. You can express your interest on a napkin. I hear this often because it's just a matter of saying, I'm ready to go to work. I want to access your services. And then that's up to us to then figure out how can we serve you? How can we determine your eligibility? How can we assess what interests you have? Where are you in your career path? And for many students, the career path lies in the getting to know, well, what's expected of me when I go to work? What can an employer expect? For those individuals who have been part of the workforce, it will look a little bit different. It could be that they're changing a career because they've acquired a disability. So we like to see the individual as a whole. We talk so much about disabilities, but there are other issues that also impact the person's ability to benefit from our services, such as, what is their home life like? What is it? Are they ready to be able to concentrate and participate in an educational program? Do they have the supports that are needed? And if they don't have them, can we facilitate accessing some of those resources so that the person can benefit? I've seen some of the questions, and I wanted to just expand on this. I've seen some of the questions in the chat and the Q&A. And one of the things that is, quite frankly, so beautiful about our program is that you could see it as a very, it's so vast and it's so diverse, and there are so many gray areas. And the reason for that is because we work with individuals. And so every case is different, every situation is different, and it's a matter of finding out who is this person, is the humanistic approach that this program lends itself to. I don't know, Mark, if you wanted to expand on that.
No, I mean, I think you said it very well. The only thing I would add is when we talk about individualization, we really are talking about informed choice, where the individual selects the services, the outcome they wish to achieve. And the counselor in the department is there to provide assistance. And so we don't make decisions for individuals. We help individuals make decisions by providing them information and then doing the best of our abilities, supporting the choices and delivering services that can help the individual achieve that outcome.
So as far as the mechanics of it, I like your napkin example, by the way. So it sounds like when you're feeling ready and you're at least age 18, ready to start the preparation process, ready for a job or a training program, it sounds like you can drop off a napkin. Maybe not during COVID, offices may be still closed, but make a phone call, it sounds like, or possibly schedule an appointment. I don't know if there's that feature through the website to try to request an appointment to start services.
Absolutely. And so our offices, just to clarify, our offices remained open continue to remain open. We continue to provide services. We meet the consumer where they wish to be met. And we understand there was and continues to be a great deal of fear regarding the pandemic and the virus. However, we continue to provide services, be it by phone, virtually, much like what we're doing today, this meeting. So we've adapted. We've had to adapt to the circumstances in order to continue to provide services and meet our consumers where they wish to be. And prepare them. Many of them couldn't participate in employment, but their interest in services continued. So we worked around whatever that individual needed and continues to need. But I wanted to clarify that because we continue to provide those services. We haven't closed, and our staff continues to rotate through. We follow safety protocols to make sure that everybody's comfortable being in an office setting as well.
Great, thank you for clarifying that, Vivian. And once a person has initiated that initial contact, how long would you say is the wait period would the first step then be coming in, possibly to see a counselor? Is that usually the first step, intake?
So I'm going to start that one because I'm going to put Mark and Vivian on the spot, okay, and the rest of the colleagues across the state. You don't wait very long at all. Okay. And you can tell them you're on the webinar and the director said you don't wait very long at all. We are working to move our services so that when you express an interest to go to work, we're going to move expeditiously to get the individual determined eligible and start that plan and services. Now, for following the letter of the regulation, the ceiling of this, not the floor, the ceiling of this, we have up to 60 days. But it is our genuine interest and effort to make it much, 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 much faster than that. So don't sit around and wait. Say, I want to come in and I'd like to do it sooner than later.
Okay, that's helpful to know. I see some questions in the chat about, well, what are these services? I know you've talked about student services and a whole array, and I've been on your website. It's actually very detailed for, so I would urge everyone after this session this evening to look at the website, but could you just give us a brief overview of what those services are?
Vivian, you want to take this?
Sure. So the services, and I saw a question regarding the different types of cases. So we're going to speak to the vocational rehabilitation program. And Joe mentioned competitive integrated employment. And we have all these terms. So what does that really mean? It's ultimately employment. All of our services are geared towards the person preparing for employment. and the services will vary from, and they're individualized. So Pam, you could apply for services and perhaps you have a job, but you are having difficulty maintaining the employment, and you may need some type of assistance. So yours would be retaining employment, and that would be the service. We would have a conversation about what that would look like. A typical case would be where someone applies for services, eligibility is determined. And the reason why eligibility is very important is because that leads to what we call the development of their individualized plan. And think of a working document. It's not a contract, it's a working document that both the counselor, the team, and the consumer participate in developing to make sure that the services are in line with the goal that the person wishes to achieve, the employment goal. So the services will vary based on what is needed and what is required to achieve the goal. There is no time period. We do monitor to make sure the person is making progress. And earlier I mentioned, we want our consumers to succeed. We want to be able to address any of the barriers that consumers experience along the way. And sometimes we have the answer, sometimes we don't. But we can certainly partner with many stakeholders in trying to support the consumer. So I know that I haven't given you a very specific answer. And the reason for that is because it's all individualized and it's geared towards the individual achieving the employment objective.
Yeah. So let me use myself as an example. What would be the services that when I was a blind young adult came to the department, what might be the services that I would have received? Well, learning how to use a cane so I can navigate my environment. Maybe learning how to use assistive technology so that I would be able to engage with reading and writing, et cetera. In my case, the training the department provided me was I was going to own my own food service industry or food service shop. And so they provided me with the training that was necessary for me to be able to be licensed to provide that. So it truly is just dependent on what kind of job you're going to pursue. We have individuals that have worked for our department, but who were consumers of our department that became attorneys. So what does it take for that individual to get from where they are when they show up to becoming an attorney? The reason you can't get a specific cookie cutter answer is because there isn't one. It's whatever service is necessary to get you into that job, into that career.
We thank you so much for all of that. We had a couple of questions related to the type of services or how high school students can engage. Can you just briefly talk about when a high school student is interested in getting started and how you work with the districts?
Yeah, I mean, I can get us started here. Absolutely. There should be no wrong door. So we first encourage the individuals to work with their local school and talk to their school administrator or to their teacher to see if there's already a connection with a local Department of Rehabilitation office. We have a liaison, an actual assigned liaison to every school district in the state. And so we were hopeful that the teachers and the administrators are aware who that is. If not, have them contact the local office and we will send that information to them. So that's the first place to start. We do want to engage with the education system because they're also a big integral part of this process. It isn't just you are working alone. We do work in partnership with schools and other resources. Another way is just to contact the local DOR office and request either student services or VR services. And if you're not clear of which one, just say you're interested in services. And have a conversation with a counselor and submit an application. For us, we really want to make this easy, and we want to, like I said, we want to make sure there's no wrong door. Other ways is to contact, if you have a regional center case worker or case carrier, that person should know the local DOR liaison as well. And you can go online and get information about where the local office is. I also put a link in the chat to where people get more information about what services are available and including DOR student services.
So let me say a thing or two about partners, because one of your first questions was, well, do I have to be a regional center consumer before I can apply? So when you come to us for services, we will partner with many different systems and providing you, the individual, with the services you need to become employed. If you are a regional center consumer, we will be partnering with the regional centers. There are certain services they provide that are beneficial to the individuals becoming ready for employment. There are certain services that they provide post our services that make sure or support the individual in sustaining employment. So when you hear that we're partnering with another system, or if you come to the Department of Rehabilitation and we're talking to you about engaging with whether it's the workforce system at the local level or the regional center, that is not us trying to push you into another system. That is us as part of being good partners, understanding who has what service available and making sure that we're providing a complement of services, not a duplication of services, so that you, the individual, can get, through your programming into your career, into your jobs.
Thank you. We have about 10 minutes left, and there are a couple more categories of questions that I want to try to get through. So I'm going to jump to those. One is for those who are interested in applying for college and those who are in college. Questions about, is there any preparation with college applications? Is there any type of support, whether with tutoring or one-on-one support for those that are in college?
So did
Go
you?
ahead. Go ahead.
It's like I stated, we talked about this earlier. In 2014, we started serving students. However, prior to that, we also served students under contracts or partnerships that we develop with local educational systems, right? So along the way, we have developed and will continue to develop plans to assist our consumers to achieve their education. Attend college, be it at a community college level, which is what we encourage first, and then transition into a four-year institution. We speak of education as a means of achieving the employment goal. So we focus on what is the goal so that the person can enter the workforce perhaps for the first time. We talked about sometimes pathway varies. If we don't know what an employer is going to require of me, and all I know is the educational system, am I really prepared to compete in the open labor market? But I think it's important to note that our services are geared towards achieving the employment goal. The pathway could be post-secondary education. It just varies and it's individualized, but we definitely have many, many consumers who are receiving our assistance in achieving their post-secondary education as a means of, once again, preparing to compete in the open labor market once they've identified their goal. We do it quite frequently, and we have guidelines that help us understand what's the pathway, what's the means of assisting, how is everyone going to contribute in order to ensure that this individual will be successful.
Thank you for that, Vivian. The other question that we received from quite a number of individuals is whether DOR is able to assist low functioning or more severely autistic individuals with employment.
So in my opening comments, I said we believe in the talent and the potential of individuals with disabilities, exception none. And we absolutely mean that. Does it mean that we have the answers to how to do it for everyone? No, but as has been said a number of times, we work with many different systems and partners to figure it out. So as an example, and I'll look to Mark and Vivian to add more details, but as an example, one of the tools that we may use to help an individual find the right kind of job that, no matter what the severity of their disability is, could be, for example, customized employment is something that we do. The other thing that you certainly, all of you have heard in some fashion is that society as a whole, both through public policy as well as actual practice, is moving away from what we otherwise have known as 14C certificates or the sub-minimum wage employment settings, the segregated settings. And so we have a strong commitment, and some of you on this forum will certainly recognize the competitive integrated employment blueprint, which is the partnership between the Departments of Rehabilitation, the Departments of Education, and the Department of Developmental Services, which is exactly aimed at this very notion that it's real work in the real world for everyone.
Thank you, Joe. I think my final question for the panel will be, as I see here in the chat, is what if an individual feels like they may not be receiving what they need from their local office? What's a recourse? What would you suggest?
Well, there's a number of due process available to anyone who is a consumer who is getting services from the Department of Rehabilitation. And one of the first things that you will receive when you become eligible and we start working with you is, what are your rights and remedies? So if you are not satisfied with the decision that is made, what recourse do you have? So one, that'll be spelled out to you right up front. But the other thing that I would say that is, in my opinion, a formal due process is very important. So I don't want to minimize that. But I would also say, we talked about under student services, providing individuals with a skill set to be self-advocates, right? To advocate for yourself. And, it's really about having that conversation. And if you think that conversation with your counselor has reached an impasse, it's simply saying, hey, can we escalate this? I'd like to speak either to your supervisor or whoever's appropriate. So there's the formal rights and remedies that an individual has. There's the informal ones. But I'm going to say at the end of the day, for me, the best one is the self-advocacy. And it's just that honest conversation about it. Our relationship isn't working. We need to try something different. And Mark and Vivian, you guys are much closer to the working mechanics of that. So please contribute there.
No, go ahead, Mark.
Okay, well, I agree, and I always describe it as being a good customer of our services. We are here to provide services to the public. We're not, consumers coming to us, individuals coming to us are not doing us any favors. We are here to serve, and we really clearly want to ensure that we're providing quality services, but it does come from being a good customer. So if there's a concern, there's not enough clarity, let the counselor know. If there isn't enough responsiveness, follow up, and absolutely talk to the supervisor, talk to another staff in the office. There's also a client assistance program that we happily refer individuals to that can be an advocate if it gets, if it gets to the point where some intervention or some outside assistance is needed. And I meet with the program, with the client assistance program regularly to get feedback from them about what they're seeing and if there are systemic issues. But the bottom line really is as a good customer, ask for clarification, ask for information, ask for assistance, and be persistent, because the last thing we want, and I think Joe opened up with a concern about how many people drop out due to lack of contact. We would much rather hear from an individual who's dissatisfied or confused or it's unclear to them than have that person drop out. So Vivian, as the district administrator and an acting regional director in a district, she absolutely has her ear to the ground and has no concerns. And I'm not speaking for you, Vivian, I think you can speak very well for yourself. But as a former district administrator, I absolutely relish the opportunity to resolve issues because people brought them to me. To me, the worst outcome is somebody leaving the program and being discouraged and not pursuing their employment goals.
So, and Mark, thank you for teeing that up. So I shared those stats with you earlier in my comments. Why did I tell you that that's our performance? It's really for a very simple reason. We don't want you or your loved ones to be one of those stats. We want you to be on the stat side that says, I came in, I got a job, I kept my job, and now I'm providing for my family. And if you don't know that, yes, if you just walk away, we end up closing your case. That doesn't work. If you're dissatisfied and you're not raising that doesn't work. Okay. And if you leave without a job, that doesn't help you. It does nothing for us. Right. So we don't want you to be in the 48%. We don't want you to be in the 32%. We want you to be on the other side of that coin.
So I'd like to add that, advocacy is critical. It's a skill set that we will utilize for the life for the rest of our lives. And so if you learn to advocate for yourself at a young age, and you also learn to manage conflict, because it could be seen as conflict, right? I disagree with what I'm being told. Well, how do you manage conflict? The fact is that we all have the rights to advocate for ourselves. And when consumers are not satisfied with the direction the case is taking, there are steps that can be addressed to resolve the issue, to resolve the conflict. And conflict isn't bad. And I think sometimes people fear that if they complain, the term complain, I'm going to go to the superior, to the supervisor, the district administrator, and complain about what is occurring. Our job, as Mark stated, is we are here to serve the public. We are here to provide the best customer service that we can provide. Many times it just means that someone may walk away not being completely satisfied, but as long as we made the effort to provide the best customer service and to try to help the person understand why things have to occur a certain way, I think we've done a good job. But I also like to emphasize that this is a partnership with our consumers. It is a collaborative effort. So we're not here to tell our consumers what to do. We're here to help the consumers navigate a system that we at DOR may know a little bit better because we're in the system, right? In the bureaucracy, if you will. But when you walk through our doors, we want to see you as our partner. We want to partner with you in your endeavor to achieve that employment goal.
And when we talk about advocacy, I want to take it to the next level. Think about it as developing the skill set, not just to get into your job, but that same skill set, you will need to keep that job. You will need that same skill set of advocacy, addressing conflict. What was one of the things that I listed from the Journal of Rehabilitation? Conflict, the ability to navigate and deal with conflict. So yes, that skill set is needed throughout the entirety of life, and even and most especially in the workplace.
So Pam, I just want to let you know, I've been trying my best to respond to some of the questions in writing. So I think I've probably answered less than 20, and I think there's like 60 plus. They're fantastic questions. I absolutely want to do our best job and make sure that nobody walks away with unanswered questions. So I would be happy to take these back, and not by myself because there's a lot, but working with my team to try to provide a response. If there are any unanswered questions, or you weren't able to ask them or even type them up here, whether in Spanish or in English, Vivian and I speak Spanish, feel free to send them to I don't know who you wanted to send them to, but please compile them and get them to either Vivian or me. There's no wrong person. we will work to provide a response. There's individual responses could be answered by the local office, but we want to make sure that all questions are answered and nobody walks away wondering about something. We want to do our best. So I tried. It's just a lot, but which I think speaks very well to the level of engagement of the group that participated today. So thank you.
Bless your heart, Mark, for offering that, because we were looking at all the open questions and applaud you so much. And thank you so much for attempting to answer those questions as you're trying to answer them here live verbally as well. We would very much appreciate that. There is a very high level of engagement from the audience, which is wonderful. I think you should warn maybe all your field offices tomorrow that they might be, getting a crush of calls or emails or napkins being dropped off. But we certainly could compile your napkin analogy, Joe, is sticking with me. But we can certainly compile these questions and get together, share them with you and your team, and then try to put them together and share them with all the participants this evening. But I will reiterate that I think the local offices is a great first point of contact, I think, with questions, as well as the website. There is a lot there. When I was trying to learn and prepare for this event, I spent quite a bit of time. I was really impressed by the breadth and the depth of the information on the website. So I would just encourage all the parents and all the professionals who are on this call to start with the website. Take some time there, because it does break down a lot of different forms, tips, resources, and the different types of services that you do offer. It breaks it down very well. I think I want to allow Joe an opportunity to perhaps give some closing comments before we depart.
So thank you. And thank you, Mark and Vivian and the rest of the DOR team for supporting and being here today to participate in this. And thank you to WarmLine and Parents Helping Parents for creating this forum. As you can see from your audience's interest, there's a desire for the information and the need. But most of all, thank you to all of you for taking the time and having an interest in employment. I shared my personal story. And again, it's not to show how good I am. I want every single youth with a disability to see themselves as whatever they kind of work they want to go do. I would relish on one of them taking my job and talking to a similar forum in years to come. And they will need all of our support, but most of all, they will need us to expect that they can go to work and they will go to work. Because if we don't believe they can, and we don't help them develop that skill set, then their chances diminish greatly. Thank you. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Joe, I love what you just said. I love what you just said, that one of our kids could be, lining up for your job. Mm-hmm. So I want to thank you and Mark and Vivian for joining us for the start of this conversation this evening. Perhaps it's the first of more to come. I also want to share with all the parents and professionals that in addition to your local DOR offices, that there are also, as Maria talked about in the beginning in her welcome comments, parent centers all around the state in various counties. WarmLine is the Early Start Family Resource Center. We typically work with the younger kids. But there are also family empowerment centers, parent training information centers all over the state. A quick internet search should help you to locate your local office for additional support, or reach out to either one of our organizations for us to perhaps help you find those resources. And with that, I think we're at the end of our time together. Thank you all again for joining us.